Good morning, everybody. I invite you to rise as you are able in body and heart so that we can begin with our praise and worship song, which this morning is Welcome to This House, number 7 in your sing book, which you can find under your seats.
Welcome to this house, open and affirming. In God's Son, we all are one, hand in hand we stand. Welcome to this house, caring and accepting. In God's Son, we all are one. Welcome to this house of God. Welcome to this house. There is room for everyone. All will sing, praises we bring. Let us all be one. Welcome to this house, where God gives the call to serve. All will sing, praises we bring. Welcome to this house of God. Welcome to this house, blessed by word and harmony. Child of God, born from above, know that God is love. Welcome to this house, filled with peace and charity. Child of God, born from above, welcome to this house of God.
You may be seated. Good morning to all of you who are here in this house and those of you who are participating from your own houses. We're glad to have you with us. You can find today's bulletin if you'd like to follow it for the service, either on the app or on our website at PlymouthUnited.org. I forgot to mention earlier, rhythm instruments in the back. You can get them at any time and play during the songs. I also added some finger labyrinths, whether the kids want to use them or you all want to use them. It really doesn't bother me if you get up in the middle of the service. I have sitting issues as well, so that's why I get to stand. But yeah, there are finger labyrinths back there if you just need to have something to do with your hands during the service. Let's see, Friday. So here's the sad part. Friday was Melanie's last day at Plymouth as the office manager. She's been here, well, let's see, this is the 26th, as of the 30th, it would have been 13 years. So a big send-off to Melanie was not something that we could provide because her house got sold a lot faster than she thought, and she bought a house a lot faster than she thought. So that's all good news for their family, but kind of a bummer for us because we wanted to have a party. So we're going to send her a gift to her new home, and it's going to be a basket or something. I hope Melanie's not watching this. It's going to be some kind of a nice basket, and because they were getting rid of, you know how you have to trim down when you move, so they didn't have to move so much stuff. So I don't want to give them a bunch more stuff, but we'd like to give them something that says, we love you, you've mattered to us, and if you would like to give to that fund, there's a Melanie gift option on PushPay. Or you can, of course, send a check and put it in the memo line so we know specifically what that's about. And happy Pride. We're glad to have you here on this Pride Sunday during Pride Month. Let's take a moment to bring ourselves fully to this time and to this place. This weekend has been filled with lots of things, hard things, Supreme Court decisions that have vexed us, more than one decision. And yet it's Pride Month and a time of celebration. So it would be no wonder if our insides were a little shaky from the conflict between all that's been going on. I know I have been finding myself sitting at home and noticing my hands shake from the tension of the difference between celebration and deep, deep concern. So I wonder if you have been feeling that way too. If your body has been reacting in multiple ways to what your emotions have been experiencing, to what your mind has been processing, and to how your spirit has been being engaged in the discourse, being engaged in the connectivity that we feel with one another. So with all that's been going on, I invite you to do what we do all the time, and that's take a deep breath and ground yourself to this moment. Be fully present in this time and in this space, whether you're in the building or you're online, whatever space you're in. We intentionally raise our awareness to the presence of holy love, knowing that love is always surrounding us, always moving through the spaces that we're in, always moving through the very molecules of our being. But sometimes, with all that's going on, the experience of love becomes numbed or tamped down. So let's breathe in the truth of the presence of what it has been and always will be, the creative force that is goodness, that is grace, and that is love. What is the truth for you in this moment? Don't be afraid of the hard truths. And I encourage you to not negate the good truths because there are hard truths, but let them dwell together in the essence of your being, knowing that what is holy love can manage them all. And as you breathe in to your body, and you connect your body with your emotions, and you connect your emotions with what you've been thinking, and you see the big picture, and you connect it to your spiritual self, know that whatever that you're rejoicing about is worthy to be rejoicing about. Whatever you're angry about is worthy to be angry about. And that this is a place that can hold it all. And that we are people that can share that all together. Let us co-create this time, bringing in the Spirit of God, the Spirit of love, however you name the divine, as a community, knowing that we don't have to shoulder all these things by ourselves, but we do it together, especially in this space.
Please join me in our responsive call to worship. This month we celebrate the diversity of families.
Thank you, God, that you have created us different.
We find unity together as a diverse family of faith.
All love comes from God because God is love.
This month we celebrate the diversity of gender identities and expressions.
We thank you, God, that you have created us different.
The expansive nature of your creation is a gift and a marvel.
It is beyond our understanding and a
We rejoice in the kaleidoscope adventure of life. Let's sing together, You Are Holy. It is number 51 from the Sing book, which you can find under your seats.
Show us the way. You show us, you show us, you show us the way. You show us, you show us, you show us the way. You are freedom, 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 you show us the way. You show us, you show us, you show us the way. You show us, you show us, you show us the way. You show us, you show us, you show us the way. You show us, you show us, you show us the way. You are justice, 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 you show us the way. You show us, you show us, you show us the way. You show us, you show us, you show us the way. You show us, you show us, you show us the way. You show us, you show us, you show us the way.
The biblical witness this morning is taken from Joshua chapter 6, verses 10 through 16. To the people, Joshua gave this command: You shall not shout or let your voice be heard, nor shall you utter a word until the day I tell you to shout. Then you shall shout. So the ark of the Lord went around the city of Jericho, circling it once, and they came into the camp and spent the night in the camp. Then Joshua rose early the next morning, and once again the priests took up the ark of the Lord. The 7 priests carrying the 7 trumpets of ram's horns before the ark of the Lord passed on, blowing the trumpets continually. The armed men went before them, and the rear guard came after the ark of the Lord, while the trumpets blew continually. On the second day, they marched around the city once and then returned to the camp. They did this for 6 days. On the 7th day, they rose early at dawn and marched around the city in the same manner 7 times. It was only on that day that they marched around the city 7 times. And at the 7th time, when the priest had blown the trumpets, Joshua said to the people, Shout, for the Lord has given you the city.
There's an old military saying,
no secrets between sailors.
but on this 1974 episode of MASH, the secret is out about Private Weston.
A non-heterosexual.
That nice boy.
Now, that's what I understand from some very reliable gossip.
And now that the private's gone public, the camp is in an uproar about whether to turn him in. But he's not the only one with something to hide.
Look, let's skip the manicure.
Hey, I'm Matt Baum. I make videos about pop culture, and this time we're talking about MASH, one of the first shows on television to tackle the issue of gay soldiers. It was an issue that the country had been grappling with for decades before MASH's gay episode aired, and one that wouldn't be resolved until decades later, making this an episode of TV made in the 1970s that uses the 1950s to talk about the 1990s. Anyway, by the time we get to the 20th century, the U.S. Army was instructing officers to report gay soldiers so they could be fired. Frank here is just following orders, and he expects everyone else to do the same. He goes to the commanding officer, Colonel Blake, and demands that he sign the discharge papers.
It has been brought to my attention that we have an undesirable in the post office.
But then word gets back to Hawkeye that Frank is forcing the discharge to go through. So Hawkeye goes to find Colonel Blake and starts criticizing him for signing the discharge papers. But then
Pierce, I didn't sign. How dare you do the right thing?
Blake refused, since all Frank had to go on was a rumor. So Frank went above his head to another officer to get the forms, even though nobody else in camp wants George kicked out of the army. And this illustrates another problem with the ban on letting gay people serve. It meant that thousands of qualified people who wanted to work and who were valued by their coworkers could just vanish from the workplace. All it took was one accusation. And remember, policies like these weren't limited to the military. Teachers, clerks, doctors, scientists, over 10,000 people are estimated to have lost their jobs in the Lavender Scare. It was a disaster for the people who were fired. Losing qualified workers was a disaster for the government, and having a constant churn of firing and replacing government workers was a disaster for the country. But then something big changed, and this witch hunt for gays reached a turning point right around the time this episode of MASH aired. That change started in 1958 when the government fired the wrong guy, an astronomer named Frank Kameny. He was working for the Army's map service when he was accused and fired, and Frank Kameny was furious. He was determined to do something about it. He became a full-time activist for the rest of his life. He organized protests and picketed the White House in the 1960s. He helped to remove homosexuality from the list of mental illnesses in the early 70s. He's credited with creating the slogan, "Gay is good," inspired by the civil rights slogan, "Black is beautiful." One of Frank Kameny's big events was a protest called the Annual Reminder, a picket in Philadelphia every summer to show the world that queer people could be out and open and proud. They held it every year, starting in 1965, and then after the Stonewall riots in 1969, organizers decided it was time to think bigger. The next summer, instead of the Annual Reminder, they organized the first Pride. And in the span of a year, queer protests went from a few dozen people to thousands. And the gay episode of MASH came exactly in the middle of that. A half-hour episode that came just at the moment in history when the tide was starting to turn, when America was slowly shifting from the assumption that queer people are sick and threatening to realizing that the real threat is forcing good people to hide.
So we're going to start with the Bible story. The context of the story about Joshua and about the 7-day parade isn't about a protest or a celebration. It's about taking over a city. What it does have that I want to highlight is the parade aspect of it. This was a multi-day event which relied on the symbolism of sevens. It was a 7-day event. And on the 7th day, they went around the city 7 times. That tells us right away that this is a story rich with metaphor. 7 is the number of God. Joshua believes God sent him to Jericho to take over the city, so the fabric of our storytelling is woven with a divine number, marking it as God's vision on behalf of the people. Now, I can't say that I really know what's going on here. Did Jericho try to oppress Joshua and the people? Was Joshua the aggressor? We could do a deep dive into the context and compare histories with other ancient texts, and honestly, we really still wouldn't know the total truth. And that's because the telling of stories and the writing of history has a purpose on behalf of the certain people that are reciting the history. Some stuff gets told and embellished. Other stuff gets left out. It happens in my family all the time. My brother and I have stories about the very same thing, and we tell it very, very differently, and we're absolutely certain that we're the correct one in telling the story. And probably we're both correct, but we're leaning on this side or that side. Your families probably do the same thing too. It's an argument that we have over the years about things like school textbooks. What should be in the textbooks? What shouldn't be in the textbooks? It reminds me of what Ecclesiastes teaches. There's nothing new under the sun. These arguments have been going on and going on and going on and going on. So for now, let's consider the story of Joshua and Jericho as a metaphor for what God can do with a group of people. This group of people was dedicated. Granted, the whole thing only lasted 7 days, but again, 7 days is symbolic. It took 7 days to make the world. So you see 7 everywhere. So the idea of them marching around the city 7 days and doing it 7 times is meaningful, but not factual. So here we are. It's Pride Sunday of Pride Month. How long have we been marching around cities? How many times do we circle around, holding our words, Like Joshua said to the people, don't speak, don't speak, don't say anything. Just wait for my word. And then finally, on the seventh day, at the seventh time around, shout, let the trumpets blow. How long have we said to ourselves, okay, be silent, there's going to be a time, we're going to speak out, there's going to be And when do we shout? When do we blow the trumpet? Now, pride parades and festivities aren't exactly known for their quiet nature. There's plenty of music, plenty of shouting, plenty of trumpets, so to speak. What we do share with this story is our indefatigable presence and our posture toward our desired goal, which is full inclusion and celebration of LGBTQ plus IA peoples. This brings us to the video. I recently found Matt Baum's YouTube channel, and I've been watching a lot of it. He really highlights some interesting stuff. This one about the MASH episode was the first time I had heard about the annual reminder demonstration. I don't know what I didn't know about history until you don't know it. That was really cool. So I looked it up. There's not a whole lot about it, but I didn't know about it at all, and that it was organized by Frank Kameny and Barbara Giddings. Neither did I realize that this demonstration shifted to become what we know as the Pride Parade. We have made great strides for inclusion since the 50s, since the 60s, since the 70s, etc. Right now, though, there's a very real concern that inclusion is going to be eroded by people in power. In spite of the fact that the majority of United States citizens embrace inclusion of all companionship orientations, gender identities, and gender expressions. Now that the right to reproductive liberty has been overruled by the Supreme Court, many other rights and liberties are being scrutinized and are under attack. I honestly can't fathom the underbelly of these attacks. I know there's a deep strategy to them. I know that fear-mongering is a way to control a group of people, like a political base, so that they trust only you, their hero, their candidate. It's not just in politics that happens either. It happens in churches all the time too, where the minister is the one who does the fear-mongering, saying, if you don't listen to me, you're going to go to hell. We don't do that here. We don't want followers by coercion. We want followers because of fellowship, because of connection, because of caring. These kinds of attacks are also meant to unmoor those that you want to destroy. You make a group of people panic, fearful. The strategy is to keep them occupied with present survival, keep them from living, keep them from thriving, make them thrash about in all aspects of their being, physically threatening them, as well as emotionally, mentally, and of course spiritually. Make them fearful of the future. This keeps your target from being able to see the big picture. Eventually, it erodes your target's sense of self and well-being. This can make people feel frozen, ill, and hopeless. Has anybody maybe started to feel frozen, ill, or hopeless recently? This is why we need churches and all kinds of communities of faith who celebrate all companionship orientations, gender identities, and expressions. We declare in these spaces that God is love and that love between all humans is good. We insist that all are created in the image of God. Our human interpretation of the divine is through our embodiment, varied, diverse. Because God is mystery and beyond what we can imagine or think. It doesn't make any sense to limit the image of the divine to a certain section of humanity when the scope of creation is filled with mystery. God must be in all. This is also why we need businesses and all kinds of communities and organizations who celebrate all companionship orientations, gender identities, and gender expressions. We need to know where we are welcome to participate in the daily movements of life freely and unencumbered by fear of violence. We need businesses to stand up, to speak out, to be the rainbow. This is why we need pride parades. Their very nature jostles us. They remind us that we are to be celebrated. The last thing that those who want us to be victims want is for us to celebrate ourselves or celebrate each other. They want us looking at our shoes in shame. But we lift our chins to the glitter of the sun and say to each other, not today. We won't be ashamed. We are gloriously made and incomprehensibly fabulous. Our celebrations are a protest against their deceit that we have something to be ashamed about, that we are flawed in some way, that our children need to be re-educated about who they say they are when they celebrate their own diversity. Our celebrations are a riot against systemic organizing, against our inherent equality. We must celebrate. Those of us on the margins and those of us who are allies in the fight. Our celebration declares that we have not been bamboozled by their lies, by their gaslighting. We aren't poisoned by their toxicity. We will remind ourselves and each other of our value and our sacred worth. We will remind each other all the time, over and over. We will not forget our value and our sacred worth. This is a hard time. We have a fight before us. Gosh, it seems like we almost always have some kind of a fight before us. While we allow ourselves time for anger and grieving, while we do our own strategizing and take action. And let's do all those things. But let's also not forget to celebrate. Let's not forget to speak kind and edifying words to ourselves. Look in the mirror if you have to. And to each other. In the words of Jesus from the Gospel of Luke, the Spirit of the Lord is upon us. Because God has anointed us to bring good news to the poor. God has sent us to proclaim release to the captives and recovery of sight to the blind, to let the oppressed go free, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor. Let us proclaim this year to be the year of God's favor, of our holy love's favor. These prophetic words are our inspiration and our hope as we take action to make sure that everybody is included, that no one is oppressed, but instead that everyone is released to live and love, creating families that are community building and soul nourishing. And with that, my friends, peace.
Let our ears be of those to listen.
Please join your hearts with mine for all these things that we brought up that are hard, and for that which we have before us. We come before God and say, Holy Love, make us wise. Make us willing. Help us to be strong. Lift up our weak limbs and invigorate us with that Pentecost spirit that you showered on all the people. May we find ourselves enlivened by your presence and not numbed to it. And even more than that, may you be expanded. May we as vessels grow larger, a larger capacity to be filled with that love that we can spread all over wherever love needs to be spread, and kindness to be spread where there is no kindness. Joy to be spread when joy is lacking. Expand our capacity to experience your goodness, not for the sake of our own selves, but so that it can be just spread around abundantly, even irresponsibly. Let us not hinder your Spirit's influence in any direction, but always anticipate, always expect that you're going to do something marvelous, whether we see it or not. Change us for those purposes, and help your Spirit to change toward that kind of goodness, toward that kind of connection and community building, all whose path we walk with. We are so grateful to have found each other and to know that your goodness is beyond anything that we can imagine, that your mystery holds within it far more diversity, far more excited creation that we can discover. But help us to be discoverers and to not be complacent with how we understand the world today, but to be eager to see even more colors of the rainbow before us so that we can engage, expand, and fill the world with all of who you are in goodness and in mercy and in grace. And because we do not want to do this work alone, because we do seek each other's company and each other's energy and support and strength, let us lift up our voices in these words of prayer, saying, Holy One of blessing, eternally we co-create ourselves in your love. All companionship orientation, all gender identities and expressions, all ways of having family. We celebrate this Pride Month for LGBTQ+ peoples everywhere, knowing that many are still not safe to come out, to be free, to live life abundantly. Heal all who are ill in body, mind, heart, or spirit. Bind up all wounds and provide adequate care. Extinguish any stigma people are enduring. This month, we celebrate because everyone should be celebrated. We are your body on earth. May our love and hope be sent on the wings of this prayer to all who need refreshing, affirmation, and love's embrace. May it be so.
Each week we collect two offerings. One is for the church, which goes into our general fund for the running of the church and our ministries. The second is the loose offering, which is sent to a designated charity which changes each week. If you brought your offering in person today, you're welcome to drop it in the offering box in the back. It is the glass church near the doors to the Northex. Our loose offering for today will go to the Open and Affirming Coalition of the United Church of Christ, which advocates for the lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender community in the UCC, and equips UCC congregations to become effective witnesses to Christ's extravagant welcome. With your support, the coalition is building a stronger movement for inclusion and justice in the UCC and beyond. The coalition's work continues until every congregation in the United Church of Christ can offer an authentic and confident welcome to LGBTQ seekers and their families. If you would like to give to our general fund, to the loose offering, or to both, you can use bill pay from your bank, send us a check, use the Plymouth app, or use PushPay according to the directions on your screen. As always, thank you for supporting Plymouth and the ministries of the loose offering. Please join me in our responsive offertory prayer. We are all one human family.
In your love, you created us.
Through your grace, you reach out to us.
You are great enough to hold us all in your arms
at the same time.
Help us to open our hearts to the world that you love.
Teach us to be well.
We yield to Spirit, offering what we have to the greater good. Let us sing together, Let Justice Flow Like Streams, number 588 from the New Century Hymnal, which you can find under your seats.
Let justice flow like streams of sparkling water pure, enabling growth, refreshing life, abundant, cleansing, true. Let righteousness roll on as others' cares we heed, an ever-flowing stream of faith translated into deed. So may God's plumb line stray define our present and true, and justice, right, and peace pervade this world our whole life through.
And now, my friends, it is time to go from this moment to whatever it is that you have next. And if it's a celebration, like a formal kind of celebrate with as much gusto as you have. And if it's just everyday life, find something to celebrate with as much gusto as you have, because this world has a lot to offer us. It never ceases to amaze me, the beauty that you can find in the most surprising places. So go forth with an expectation that you will experience God, that you will experience human connection that is filled with love, and that you will experience your own beautiful self. Go forth in peace and as peacemakers.
You shall sing with joy and be led forth in peace. The mountains and the hills will break dark before you. They'll be shining